Power Lunch Live. This is Rhett Power from Charleston, South Carolina, live this week on LinkedIn's new platform, LinkedIn Live. This is the Power Lunch. The point of the show is to have today's thought leaders, CEOs, authors, best-selling authors, people who are doing amazing work in the world, people who are making a difference, people that we can learn from. Today's no exception with Ben Fanning here. We are at the Highfalutin Coffee Shop over in West Ashley part of the city.
That's how we roll, Highfalutin.
Highfalutin.
Highfalutin on LinkedIn Live.
I've got my Highfalutin
Yes.
tea right
Very
here.
fancy.
It is.
Fancy coffee mugs.
Very much so. But I've got Ben Fanning with me today on the program. He's a best-selling author of The Quit Alternative. He's a fellow Inc. Columnist and coach, and he's got a new book out. It's called War for the Employee Mind. We're gonna do a little audience and consulting and coaching today. We're gonna look at. You got some surprises for us there, right?
Lots of surprises.
All right.
Stay
tuned. We're going to talk about both the books, Ben. I wanted to talk about, you talk about in a lot of your work about the catastrophic cost of quitting a job or firing someone as an employer. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So, a lot of times when people consider quitting their job, they always think about it from the perspective of the employer. And I'm going to talk about that, but I want to first talk about the cost to the actual employees, okay, the employees out there. If you're thinking about quitting your job, I'm not saying never consider quitting, but think about it as you would any big investment of time and energy. Think about the cost. And I got a copy of my book here, and in the product placement, in the front page, or in the front section of this, I have an infographic that breaks down the cost to the employee, okay? And I quantify the cost to the employee of quitting, the average employee, as $36,573, which happens to be the same, it happens to be just more than the average cost of a new car in the US. And it's actually only half as expensive as the cost of a wedding in Charleston, South Carolina, being twice that. But when you think about the cost of your time of the job search, that's $15,000. If you think about your ideal job out on the open market, it's probably going to take it takes about, I would say probably 6 to 10 months. That's the cost of your time of the job search. A lot of times when you go and you change jobs, you've accrued vacation that you don't take with you, that's $12,000. The cost of no raises or promotions initially, yes, you might get a bump in salary whenever you go to the next job, but when you get there, you're going to be learning all the ropes and really starting over, and you've got to go through this whole process of building up credibility, building up wins to actually get that bigger merit increase or promotion down the road. And then one of the most stressful things that an employee goes through is a job change. It's very disruptive to your personal life, to your professional life, and there's a cost to that stress. And so when you add up all these different categories, it adds up, as I mentioned, over $36,000 a year. And it's really, really expensive. So again, before you make that jump, consider the cost.
All right, you consider the cost, but you hate your job.
Yeah. A lot of people are probably asking that same question right now.
It's the first thing that came to mind, right? But as a leader, obviously, we're going to talk about the cost to the business in a little bit and sort of talk about it in the other way. But we obviously know there's a big cost of quitting a job, or being in the headspace where you want to quit a job, because that's not good for anybody either. How do you make it better?
The first thing you got to do is engage with the job you have, not the job you wish you had. Now, if you hate your job, it's easy to get your mind thinking about that next opportunity, that next job. Okay, I've got to get out now. If you got to quit, if you got to get in that headspace, the first thing to remember is, if you're going to quit, make sure you're thinking about something that you're wanting to do to run to versus running away for something. Most people quit their job from that mind space of, I'm just trying to escape. So instead of doing that, first get into the place of where engaging with the job you have. Now you may be saying, well, Ben, I've been trying that for years. How do I do that? First thing is, instead of, whenever you hear that little inner voice saying, do I quit or do I stay? Do I quit or do I stay? That's really a binary option, right? Quitting means that the grass is going to be greener on the other side, when in reality, most people find that the grass is always greener on top of the septic tank. And staying just means you're going to take another one for the team. So instead of staying or leaving, replace that thought with, I'm going to stay, but stay differently.
Okay, what does that look like?
How can I stay but stay differently? And
Yes.
so the first thing you got to do, okay, after you make this decision, I'm going to stay but stay differently, is start a foundation of thinking about why you're working in the first place. Because you got to come up with some things first off to sustain yourself.
Right.
Now, I like to think about Simon Sinek's golden circle theory about leaders start with why. A lot of people know what they do at work and they know how to do their job, but they're not thinking about why they're actually working in the first place.
Right.
And when I was a burned out employee and I was trying to really reinvent myself at work, I needed some reminders for the darker times. And I listed out things like, well, one of the reasons I'm working is to provide for myself and my family financially. I had a couple of coworkers I enjoy working with, so I'm working for them to make a contribution.
Right.
And also, I'm working to develop myself. And I didn't really want to develop myself more necessarily in the job I had at the time, but I wanted to develop myself in other professional ways, like in the coaching and leadership space. So I started looking for opportunities at work to do that. So that's step one. The second thing, the other thing, and one more thing I want to mention on this is to start looking at your job description, not as where your job ends, but where your job begins. Not where your job ends,
does that
but
mean?
where it begins. So your job description is the clay on the wheel. In fact, when I go into companies and I say, show me a copy of your job description, most people can't even find the thing. Or they say, man, I
never got one.
I never got one, or I hadn't seen that thing in years. So,
Well, it comes up during your annual review. It comes up once a year, right?
yeah, they pull the annual review. Did you do all these things? And they're like, that's not even my job anymore, right? Because jobs are dynamic. They change based on the needs of the business. And this can be a very frustrating thing for a very frustrated employee. However, it's like clay, okay? It's like clay. That means you can mold it. Most people's jobs really only have a couple things that you do every day that add big value to the company, and those are the things you got to keep doing, okay? You got to keep doing those. But all the things on the outside are ones that you can start to mold to your own interest, your strengths, and your passion, make a contribution to the organization, but also develop yourself in more engaging ways.
What does that look like practically? So again, I hear what you're saying, but I'm sitting here right now thinking, okay, that sounds great. How do I do it?
How do you do it? Okay, so here's one step that I would recommend that you do today. Okay, not tomorrow. Do right now. You can actually do it during this LinkedIn live show and
Listen
then
up.
report back. Okay. All right. Pull out your calendar. All right. Look back over the last 3 days. Okay. Take a pencil. Okay. Write down those things you did or meetings you attended where you felt more energized afterwards than before you actually did them. For most people, there probably aren't that many things, right?
Right.
The other thing is, I want you to create a second column and write down those activities or meetings you went to where you actually ended up feeling depleted afterwards, like you left it all on the field. Maybe you had success in that meeting or that activity, but afterwards you actually felt maybe worse, or you felt like you needed a nap, okay? That is a gold mine for you. That is a complete gold mine for you, because once you have this list, and then the next thing, okay, after you do that list based on your history, I recommend that people look forward 3 days.
Okay.
What are the things you're looking forward to? And what are the things you're not looking forward to? And that is the treasure chest for you. Those are the golden nuggets that you're going to use to start improving your workday. Because we're going to try to get more of those activities in your workday that you're looking forward to or gave you more energy, and start coming up with some strategies to stop having to do or do less of through delegation, automation, or just stopping it all out together those things that drain you.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, what matters most for a lot of people is they can walk out of their office every day feeling successful, feeling energized. You have enough energy to go and hang out with your family and your friends, to go to the gym, to go to the soccer field. You're feeling a little bit better, and you're going to start improving things immediately. You may not have the ideal job tomorrow, but you can at least start winding your workday up in a really positive way.
Well, and I think it also, even if you know, right, that ultimately this is not, because we switch jobs so frequently nowadays, right? Mm-hmm. It's still making it better, right? Even if you left, you're going to leave in a much better place, right? And your job search is going to be done from a much better place, right?
Wow, yeah.
Right, so either way, it's a win-win, it seems to me.
Yeah, it is a win-win. And it's the old Boy Scout adage that my Scoutmaster drilled in my head.
Always be
Whenever we'll always be prepared. And I was going to say also, from a camping perspective, he'd say always leave the campsite better than the way you found it. So when you come back or someone else comes along, they're going to find it in a better space.
Right.
If you leave it trashed and messed up, other people will not take care of it, and it makes matters worse. And then you're not going to want to come back there either. Right. So it's an important sort of, I guess, a life lesson to think about.
Well, I mean, the world's smaller, right? So why burn it? Why burn those bridges? Why? I just, it doesn't make sense. I mean, so, and it doesn't, I don't think it does, it's healthy to look for a new job when you're in a bad space anyway, right? Leave when you're in a good place.
Wow, hallelujah to that.
Yeah, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
So
that's huge. I just want to say that's actually a really important point you made, because, I mean, your mindset is everything when it comes to interviews. And applying for new jobs. And you may be willing, I mean, a lot of times, and I did this for years as an employee, I would leave one organization and I would sell myself into the same exact position, more or less, in another company. And it was like I was being haunted by the ghost of Christmas past. I'd always have like the same boss, same bad boss, same bad customers, same bad coworkers would all just show up like they were haunting me, and I blamed them. And the reality was, I had to start with me. And until I started changing how I approached my own job, it really, I discovered that I was the common element, and that was not a pleasant thing to realize. But if you haven't, you're the place where it always starts, and the good news is it puts you in total control.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, so I want to say hi to Lonnie Ray. If your neighbors frown, then move. Thanks for the comment.
If your neighbors frown, then move.
Yes.
All right. Well, yeah, sometimes, when it comes to coworkers, thinking about your neighbors, like your coworker is your neighbor, I consider it that way. And so to riff on that for a second, it's so important. Like, you can't always choose your coworkers, and you may have a frowny, grumpy coworker, and you can't always choose, and that can sort of bring you down at work and put you in a negative headspace. But the first thing is, when you can choose who you spend time with outside of work, make a conscious decision.
Yeah.
Go to the happy hour, not the unhappy hour. That's pretty important. I'm here at coffee happy hour with my friend Rhett.
Right.
By choice. And also, when you're planning your daily interactions, I always like to plan my day trying to get started with a positive dose of momentum.
Okay.
So instead of having that coworker come in that's going to be frowny and grumpy, maybe don't plan that meeting first off. Maybe save that for the end of the day, make it as short as possible, and really try to kick things off in a way that's positive, in a way that you can schedule those meetings and control them.
And minimizing the time with those people, right?
We all
have those friends that sort of absolutely drain us, right?
Yeah.
And we have people in our lives that maybe aren't friends, but they drain us. And I think is what I've learned to me is that it's not healthy for me to spend a lot of time with them. right? And to be serious, I mean, it's a drain, and it doesn't feel good, and it's not productive for me. And I hate to be stingy with my time and not all giving with my time, but you have to do things that are healthy for you, right?
And time is a limited resource.
Right.
It's not unlimited.
And if you hear that giant sucking sound when they walk in the room, right, and it sucks the air out of you, then it's not worth the time.
Yeah. And so that's great advice. And we're sitting here talking about that, but for me, I have to constantly remind myself of that. And there's that famous, I think it's Jim Rohn quote that says, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with," and that applies to like finances and health, and it certainly applies to happiness.
Indeed. Indeed. What is I love this piece you wrote about securing your spot in the CEO's inner circle. So, okay, you've done some work in the last 5 minutes. You've fixed your attitude about your job. Now, how do you make it even better by becoming someone of value, someone that the leadership of the organization really values, and really values who you are and your contribution, and comes to you for that kind of help? How do you get in the inner circle?
Yeah. So after you figure out the activities you want to get more of in your workday, we already went through that exercise, taking the calendar out, starting to walk through that. You got to figure out a way to get more of that in your workday, right? You want more of that. And so the most strategic way to approach that is to add value in ways that are in those domains that you enjoy. And as you add value, you start to attract that kind of work.
Right.
And that is how you start to secure your place in the CEO's inner circle, adding value, doing work that you actually enjoy. I've worked with clients, you probably have too, Rhett, where they've had a lot of success in areas that they don't actually enjoy doing that work.
Right.
And they get rewarded because they always thought, well, if I just pushed a little bit harder doing this work I don't really enjoy a lot, I'll eventually get to the work I do want to do.
Right.
And it almost never seems to happen that way.
No.
So be conscientious about the work you're doing, but then translate that into a value add. Now, are you a horse racing fan?
Not much.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you're a horse racing fan, you're going to totally get this. If you're not, I'll explain it a little bit. But basically, I talk about it as you want to create the win trifecta. And a trifecta bet is when you got you're strategically betting on the horses, the top 3 horses, and how they're going to finish in the race.
Okay.
But the key in a trifecta bet is you have to pick them in the right order. In the right order. And when a lot of employees and leaders are talking about something or making a request of the CEO to get more work they enjoy or how they want to work on a project, they present it in a way that's not the trifecta. They present it first, what's in it for them, then what's in it for the boss, then what's in it for the company. And the work trifecta is you want to flip that and get it in the right order. If you don't get it in the right order, you're probably not going to win, right? You're not going to win the bet. What you want to do is you want to talk about how it's going to benefit the organization first. What's the return on investment for them for investing in you and your team for this project? Or number 2, what's in it for the team and how's the team better off? And then lastly, you may or may not want to talk about how it benefits you. I like to describe that as you can describe how it's going to make you overall, for the long term, more valuable to the company. Yeah, right. And so it's actually a win for the company, the team, and you all at the same time. So that's how I like to think about that. But it's really important to think about, it's easy when you're working inside. Salespeople realize this right out of the gate. They always think about how can I present this information so it's a benefit to the customer. But inside the organization, people forget that your CEO is your customer. Yes, you have external clients, and so you got to think about how you're going to position your ideas in a way that benefits the CEO and benefits the team.
Right. And
when you start thinking that way, you can start seeing some powerful progress, even in the most frustrating jobs. Even in the most frustrating jobs.
That's interesting. I see where you're going with that in terms of really how you frame your conversations and what you want, but just turning it around a little bit and making it more, understanding who your internal customer is, which I think is important. I think we often don't think about our managers and our CEOs and our leadership as an internal customer, right? And think about the customer service to them, right? So that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant.
It reminds me of a quote from one of the founders of Hewlett Packard who said, "Marketing is much too important to leave to the marketing department." And so that's someone that really knew marketing, and it's really you're learning to sell internally to your leaders. I mean, having your ideas accepted is a huge part about being an effective leader. And unfortunately, that's not something that's really taught around. It's not taught in training courses. It's not even taught in school. It's all about like brand positioning versus starting day to day, trying to find ways to connect with your audience in a way that moves them to be open to your ideas and take action.
Yeah. So Joy, thank you for making a comment. Leaving a job and a workplace in a better place is a way not to burn bridges. Good advice. Thanks, Joy. I will say, if you have questions or comments, please drop them in on LinkedIn or on the other social media. If we don't get to the questions or comments today, we'll jump online afterwards and certainly engage with you there. But the line is open, so if you have questions from a man Ben here, please do ask. How do you? Let's get to the new book.
Okay.
Let's get to the new book because
New book.
we have some props and we have some things, some surprises here. But I want to talk about the new book is called "The War for the Employer Mind," the employee mind, and the employee mind.
Yep.
Why is it important? Is it because we have 3% unemployment? Is it because everybody's coming after your top talent? Why is it something that, as leadership in companies, why should we put a lot of energy into making our places, or I guess, why should we really care? I mean, I guess is the question.
Yeah, that is a great question. So
how do we stop the turnover?
The low unemployment, the turnover, those are all consequences, and they're making the war much more intense, making them more and much worse for all of us leaders. Okay.
Because sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But I think there are two questions here because there's the external where somebody's coming after your talent, right, and people are saying, hey, for a bigger paycheck, come over and do the same thing, right, or something, or you get a bump. But there's also the internal war. Right, the culture, fighting people, the mindset that we were just talking about for a few minutes. So talk about it, because I think it's a real interesting topic.
The most dangerous part of the war, or not and I'm going to talk about this, like the cost of turnover and employees leaving, but the most dangerous, most costly employee isn't the employee that quits and leaves, it's the employee that quits and stays. Okay, because it's disengagement. Gallup says it's over 87% of the global workforce. They're there. If you're on LinkedIn Live, you're probably, I'm hoping, wanting professional development. That's why you're here today. And you're one of the most engaged employees at the office. Maybe not. Look to your left, look to your right. They're probably both disengaged, or at least partially, right? Because that's the nature of the workforce today. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay, and as a leader, the war for the employee mind is the everyday battle to defend your company's competitiveness, profitability, and very survival against the enemies of disinterest, disengagement, and demotivation.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, you're going to lose this battle, right? And they're going to quit and they're going to stay, or they're going to quit and they're going to leave, and the costs add up. And it impacts the bottom line. And so this book is about that battle that all these leaders face today, that we all leaders are facing today. And how do you start taking on more ground, right? How do you start to win the battles that eventually can help you win the war and become the leader or maintain your leadership status in the industry?
Okay. What are some ways that we can fight, and What are some things that people can leave the program with today and say, okay, I can do this better. I can attack this problem because I know it's a problem. Or maybe it's maybe I need to start having conversations with people who I know have opportunities elsewhere, and see how I can help them make this their job better. Because I think if you're happy, you're less likely to. I know people aren't as. I can't say. I don't know that I believe the statistic that people aren't as money motivated. I know that it's a certain level. If the money is right, you have to make a decision. But I think if you're a great culture and you have a great workplace, they're less likely to leave for a little bit more money somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true. From what I understand, the research out there, it's not all money based. Money makes a big difference, but there's also elements of trusting you as a leader, as recognizing your top talent, making sure that they understand that they're safe, meaning safe from being fired immediately, meaning safe that they're there to develop. One interesting things is if you develop your talent, they're more likely to stay. So you're kind of building in a brick wall around the employee, and not literally, not really brick walling them in.
Don't build brick
walls. But what we're talking about here is building different walls around to do this. Now, one of the things that I'll say from an overarching perspective is you've got to start to establish a proactive strategy as a leader than a reactive strategy. Most people that are losing, leaders that are losing the war for the employee mind, are maintaining a reactive status to employee disengagement and employee turnover. In other words, what happens is the employee comes in, they turn in their resignation, and you don't have a play. You don't have a playbook established to keep them, to have that conversation. Okay? A proactive leader is going to do things like have a stay interview conversation, which, by the way, if you just ask, and it has a fancy name called the stay interview, but it's just about asking an employee, why are you staying around in the first place? You've been here for 5 or 6 years. Why are you here? And you might be surprised.
Yeah,
I've had many leaders come to me and say, "Been asked this question," and they say that, you know what, it's conveniently located in my house, and I can walk to happy hour with my friends afterwards, and things are pretty good. Well, that sounds pretty good. And and this leader came back and actually bought them happy hour a month later. Went back and said, "I'm going to happy hour with you," and it was on that later, and they did that. So just some little things like that can make a big difference. Another thing that proactive leaders do is they understand the cost. And I talked about at the beginning of this LinkedIn Live, where if you're an employee that's considering quitting, think about the cost. Well, as a leader in the war for the employee mind that you're leading day in, day out, think about the cost if one of your top leaders leaves. And I'm going to show this.
Yeah, bring it up there, yeah.
And if you can kind of see this, $235,672 right there. It's a huge number. A lot of people know about this $67,000 cost, and that's the cost of rehiring and retraining. So that's an employee who walks out the door. You've got to file some paperwork. You've got to get a recruiter on the line. You've got to find them. Okay, that's that cost. Cost of giving them the drug test, all these little administrative things. That's the $67,000. But what's even more expensive is this number here, which is the $121,375, which is the one that really blows some people's mind, which is the cost of the empty desk. Yes, the empty desk where no one's sitting, and the average time that is open, that desk sits open, is 68 days, according to the Conference Executive Board, CEB. Okay. So this is a really big cost, because what happens during that time is the co-workers have to take on that extra work because that work needs to get done, or it may not even get done, or worse yet, what often happens is you, the leader, have to do their job for 68 days.
Yep.
And who is being the leader when you're getting pulled into the administrative task of these other jobs? Right. You're probably doing it, but you're not doing it as fast. And you're probably not going to execute it with high enough quality because you're getting pulled in so many directions. So the cost of losing that top talent really starts to add up. And there's two other costs. One is the cost of the higher salary. Now on here, based on the average salary, it's $7,800, but for a sort of an upper level white collar type position, that's even a higher number. On average, to hire someone at that level position, you have to pay an additional 18 to 20% more to hire them and bring them in. Oftentimes you got to increase their title. I mean, you've probably seen this situation where someone was a manager, you need to make them a director to bring somebody in, or a director make them a VP, and all of a sudden this thing gets really expensive. And the last one is the new employee ramp-up period.
Wow.
New employee ramp-up period. The cost of this is $39,000 right here. Okay. Now, what does that mean? That is, okay, so let's say you've got an employee that's been with you for 5 years. They've learned all the ropes. They know how to log into everything. They've learned all of your different shortcuts to your systems that you've got, and they know all your key customers. Then they leave. And you bring someone off the street, okay? Maybe they've got a sparkling resume, and it just looks beautiful. They've done the job exactly. And if they've done the job exactly, do they know how to do it at your company? They don't know who to invite to the meetings, right? They don't know how to use the systems efficiently. Yep. And this ramp-up period, research shows, can take anywhere from 8 months to 2 years. And I met with a leader yesterday. He works in the public sector, and he says, Ben, 2 years is not even long enough. Okay, right. So I'm telling you, this is a big cost. Often people overlook this. And so what happens is, and I have some numbers right here. I don't know what size your company is, but this is for a 100-person company with a 7% turnover rate. Okay, if you lost 5 of your key people, that's $2.6 million in lost productivity to the bottom line. Wow. From those 5 top players leaving.
That's
now,
incredible.
If instead you treated them a little differently, right? You gave them some good training. You gave them a 5% merit increase, which is pretty high on the merit increase. Most are averaging like 2 to 3%. You gave them 5%, and you gave them a 15% bonus. That would have only cost you $351,000. So you could have spent $351,000,
wow,
or you could have spent $2.6 million, right? You want door A, the 2.6, or door B with a 350 grand? I will take door B. Okay, the $350 investment.
And you'll stay in business, and the other guy won't.
Yeah. And these employees who are staying around, by the way, sort of has it's a virtuous cycle.
Yeah.
You keep the great talent. The great talent often knows other great talent.
They're brand ambassadors for you.
They're your best brand ambassadors.
That's your best growth. That's your best growth strategy of any.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really amazing how they can be advocates for your brand. They make your workplace better. They make your job easier. So on Friday, every once in a while on a Friday, as a leader, you'll be able to leave the office a little bit early and go home and hang out at the house, or leave town for that nice 3-day vacation. And when you're on vacation, you're not going to be checking your phone all the time, wondering what's happening back at the office, because you've got those employees that you've been able to retain running the show, and you have a lot of confidence in them.
Well, you can grow. You can focus on what this does, right? Is it gives you the ability to be strategic. It gives you the ability to focus on what you have to do as a leader, which is help grow your company, right?
Yes.
And put the processes in place. I mean, it gives you. I mean, you were talking about the vacation. I mean, we all love that moment when we get to the point where our team can handle it. But I think most importantly for me, this says, okay, I'm putting people in the and I'm optimizing where they are, what they're doing, their work. From that, I can trust that they're getting done what needs to get done, and I can focus on growth. I can focus on the important things. Which, I mean, I spent years and years working in the business. I hate the cliche, but I spent years working in the business. When I started working on the business, that's when we exploded.
Wow, yeah.
Right, and so I think this puts you in a position to be able to do what you have to do for growth. And right, and you said it, I mean, you start having people that are your biggest, I mean, advocates, they're your biggest, I mean, they help your business grow because they're happy, right, and they're engaged. And
I like that. And
I love this because I think it illustrates, we got to post if we can, or is it not yet out?
It'll be in the front of the book when it comes out, and so I'll make sure
when it comes out in a couple weeks, let's have you back on the program.
Yes.
Then we can officially
Rhett Power.
put it out there.
That will be great. Yeah, that'll be really good.
That's a really cool illustration.
You know, there's that old adage of the best offense is a good defense. We're talking about defending your top employees. And so the next step in this, we talked about the cost, but who are your best employees, right? The 80-20 rule, right? The Pareto principle. Who is in that 20% that makes the 80% of the positive impact? I'm asking you today, and maybe you can respond on LinkedIn Live to us. Are you in the camp? Do you know? Have you identified that top 20%?
Yep.
Right, and maybe let's just say, have you identified the top 5%? You can get a lot of mileage out of that, because then you can start to realize,
sure can,
and start proactively planning for those. It can be hard to have a retention strategy for the top 20%. You can do it for the top 5%.
Absolutely.
Right? You can focus those resources. I don't usually recommend an aggressive employee retention strategy, just peanut butter spread across the whole company, because you start to lose the power, no pun intended, or pun intended. You want to focus the power, right?
Yeah.
You want to focus. So instead of spreading your strategy and focus like the sun, where it spreads on the grass and all the grass grows, focus it like a laser beam. We all know what happens when you put the magnifying glass up to the leaf and the sun comes through. It's so hot, it can start a fire. So
No, but look, I think you're onto something, right? As a CEO, I'm focused on my top tier management, on my management, right? It's incumbent to teach your managers how you want to lead, how you want to work to retain people. So if you lead this way and you expect your management to lead this way, right, you're going to retain even your lower end, your new,
the frontline managers,
right? And you're going to retain them, but they're going to retain their teams too, because this is how they manage.
I love that point. It's like a nested situation, or it reinforces everything.
And you expect your team, your managers, to have a retention strategy for their team, right? And that, I just think that's how you would, to me, that's how you implement that.
Yeah, you model it.
Right.
And say, hey, everybody, look what I'm doing. Congratulations, you're some of the top. And then, set the expectations. I love that. And then it really trickles down, and then it's reinforced, because it's really like a train the trainer situation.
Right. Because I want to retain at all levels of the organization.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And people do. A lot of times the executives think about their most immediate staffs, but they don't think about, or they're not overly focused on frontline managers. They're interfacing with their customers and really driving the bottom line every day.
Right.
And so by having that global strategy to affect all levels in a positive way, you can get a lot of results that way too.
All right. So Lonnie Ray, she asked, you said to analyze what gives you energy or not. How does somebody do your advice when the things they fear most but need to do that are draining them? Does that make sense?
So, so if the things that you fear are the draining activities,
I think that's what she's
asking. Or the things that give you energy are the ones that. Well, I'll take two approaches to it. Okay. So the first one is, if you know the activities that most energize you, and you're afraid to go do them, or there's not space to go do them, at work, you know where to start. Your personal life, okay?
There you go.
And I'll give you an example. I was an executive, and I wanted to sort of get my message out there and start blogging. And I was afraid I was going to get fired as a blogger, because our company didn't really have a specific criteria about it. I'd heard all these scary stories about people doing things on the internet and getting fired for it. So I'm like, okay, is blogging acceptable? So what I decided to do was I started a website called executivecrossroads.com, and I started blogging under a secret identity called Executive X. Now, I was probably going a little overboard with the secrecy of it, but it allowed me to sort of cut my chops doing an activity outside of work, okay, that allow me to eventually bring it inside of work, and I'll explain that. So I was blogging in the secret identity, but there was a big problem with it, was because I couldn't tell anybody, right? If I was telling, I could say, hey, there's this great blogger out there called Executive X. wink, wink, that's not me out there. So I decided eventually would start blogging under benfanning.com. And really what I found was no one really cared. Like, no one knew about Ben Fang, no one was Googling my name, no one knew. But what I decided to do each week was I would write an article on benfanning.com, and then I would post it on our company's LinkedIn page that was run by an employee, not in a formal capacity. And what happened was absolutely nothing. No one responded to that article, but what I found was when I would go home at night and check my stats, I would see people were clicking through on it, but yet no one was talking to me about it at work. They probably thought, Fanning and his crazy ideas, who knows? But then one day, what happened was I was in the staff meeting and my boss says, hey everybody, they want us to contribute something to the company newsletter. And then he turns to me and says, Fanning, you like to write, don't you? And I thought, yeah, I like to write. And so I wrote, that was the first time I wrote something, and it went out to 100,000 employees in the company newsletter.
Wow.
And it wasn't like huge life-changing type, mind-blowing type stuff. It was about like the basics of leadership and how do you make a positive impact at work. Just really simple stuff. It went out, and that was the day I got more of what I like doing in a big way done at the organization. Now, one of the other ways I did it later was my boss was complaining to me and everybody that we weren't getting closure on our projects. The projects were going way past the deadline. In fact, we were so bad on our deadlines that people in the company were padding our deadlines for us. So we would say things like, hey, don't worry, I'll get that done for you by Friday. And they'll say, no, that's okay. A week from Friday is just fine. And we're like, no, we'll get it done for you by Friday. And they're like, please, you guys always miss your deadlines. And my boss hated this. And so I thought, you know what, this is my chance. I said, boss, I got an idea. I want to do a 5-part workshop for our team on getting closure on projects. And I thought the man was going to give me a big hug and kiss me right there. He's like, sure. You mean we're not going to pay you extra? You're going to go out and design this and come do it? Yeah, and I did it. And after I did that, and they had some positive results, then I went out and he recommended me to some other groups. And I did this same workshop about how do you create a good deadline, how do you manage it, and make sure your team hits it. And it just sort of grew from there and grew positive momentum.
Wow. So
then again, I discovered the stuff that I wanted to do, and I was figuring out ways to bring it in. And yes, was I scared about blogging? Was I scared about doing a workshop on deadlines? What made me think I was qualified to even do something on deadlines, other than I'd been missing them? I was one of the guys missing them all the time, right? So I had to get better at it myself. And so suddenly, it's all kind of coming together. So for you, I would say number one, make sure you know what those activities are, even if you're afraid to bring them in at work. And two, don't give up hope. There's a will, there's a way.
Yep.
Then three, it's time to get creative and start brainstorming a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lonnie. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Lonnie.
If you have more questions, please do ask. So going back to the book,
Okay.
We were going to do a little.
Oh yeah,
we were going to do a little cover focus group, maybe. I guess.
Focus group. Yeah, we need a focus group on the cover of the book. So
what is your dilemma?
Yeah. So there is the book cover that I was originally going to select and wanted to do, and I'll show you that one right now. This is the War for the Employee Mind book cover. Okay, you can see it's got some people doing tug of war. They're tugging for results, tugging each other for the great talent, and that's that. This is the one that feels oh so comfortable. Okay, and for the longest time, this is what I wanted to go with, and still could. Now, this is I'm going to show you the one now that my initial reaction was I need to fire the person who worked on the book cover. It was that, it rubbed me the wrong way. And this is it. Can y'all see this? Lonnie, can you see that? So what you see on there are soldiers, okay, storming the line. They're armed, equipped. So this is, A is the first one, B is the second one. Now, if you're on this right now, tell me which one you would go with. Would you go with A, being the Wyatt one with the tug of war, or B, with the soldiers, okay? A or B. Now I'll tell you my dilemma. When I saw this, I was shocked. I thought, man, this looks dangerous. This looks military. Is this really a war for the employee? Is a war for the employee mind really a war? Or is it a game we're playing with our employees?
Yeah.
Right? Is the future of the organization, are their lives at stake?
Yeah.
Or are we talking about a game? So go ahead and weigh in now. We got some Louis Armstrong playing, so I'll kind of do this while you gotta get this going there.
Make us dizzy.
All right, so I'll go ahead and sort of elaborate here. The one that I've decided to go with, and I'm curious about your comments here, is this one. And this is the one, again, it was such a shock to me, I didn't want to do because I felt like it could upset some executives. They say, Ben, armed soldiers on the front of the book, it's not going to go over well at our company.
All right, Joshua. Okay. Joshua says B.
Okay, Joshua. Joshua's going this one.
Hudgens.
Thanks, Joshua. Yeah, so keep them coming in. And so as I kept thinking about this, I'm like, man, this is a battle. It's a battle internal in the organization and external, and super important from the standpoint of securing your legacy as a leader.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're taking care of your employees and their families, and there's a lot at stake. So next time we meet, you're going to see the book with this cover, and we'll get your thoughts again at that point.
Okay, fair enough. Well, what is the last question I always I think next time maybe we can have a discussion about burnout, because you're known as the burnout
specialist.
The burnout specialist, and I think that's a whole program right then of itself about how do you battle burnout, and I do want to get into that. But the last question I always ask everybody is, what's the best advice you ever got?
The best advice I ever got.
And from who? And from who?
Okay. So the best advice I ever had was from my first boss, Gary Adams. Not usually use his name, but I think he'd like Rhett a lot. I think if he gets to watch this, I think he'll like this a lot. So his nickname around the office was Yoda, because he was the person that everyone would go see. He was the corporate wise man. He'd been around.
For good reasons.
Yeah, he didn't look like Yoda.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
Gary, don't take offense to that. And Yoda in wisdom, not in appearance.
Good. That's good.
And you probably have Yoda at your office. Yeah, people know Yoda at their office, because that's the office where everybody's lined up outside to get this person's advice. And people ranked above him, lower than him, they're all there. And I thought, since I was working for him as an employee, that my job was to be Yoda Jr. And so what I would do, someone would bring me a question, and I would go get in line and work my way down the line, go in and say, Gary, here's what I have, what do I go do with this? And he would give me the answer, and then I would go relay it to the person. And I thought, hey, this work thing's pretty easy, man. Yeah. I'm adding value. This is awesome.
Right.
Well, one day, got the same process, got a question from someone, I got in line, I walked in, but when I looked at him, his face was a little bit red. I could tell he'd been having a bad day, but I didn't care. I was all about me. I said, I want to get, what I really want here is, I just want to get my answer and go back and tell him. And instead, he said, Fanning, don't you ever come in here again unless you've thought of 3 potential solutions for the question you have. I don't care how crazy they are. And then he ripped up the paper I gave him. He lit up a cigarette in a non-smoking facility and blew smoke in my face. Now, I don't recommend that as a leadership moment.
I love it.
But I will say that it left a huge mark on me, and really he unleashed me that day to start thinking for myself. And I have problems. We run into problems every day as leaders. Our teams run into problems. How often are you going to someone else for the answer versus giving yourself permission to think creatively about the problem and come up with 3 potential solutions. You don't want to have to come up with the solution.
Yeah.
But give yourself the freedom to come up with 3 potential ones, write them down, and then go ask somebody for some input. Leaders love this advice. It stuck with me, and I give that to you today.
He empowered you.
He really did.
He empowered you is what he
He
did.
gave me the power.
He gave you the power, man.
And now I'm on LinkedIn Live with Mr. Power.
And we're going to do it again. This has been the Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn. And hey, join us Monday through Friday around 12 noon Eastern Standard Time when I'm not on the road. Sometimes we get to show off a little bit later, but that's okay. Thank you for spending some time with us on your lunch break, on your lunch hour, or if you're in the West Coast in your morning time. But anyway, nonetheless, thank you for spending some time with us. You are why we do the show, and we really value your time and your participation, your engagement here today on the program. Now, if you want to check out the schedule, we've got a great schedule coming up in the rest of this month. We're going to be in Luxembourg in November. We're going to do the show on the road a couple other times from Mexico and some other locations. So keep following us. You can check out powerlunch.live. Powerlunch.live. Yes, that's the domain. It's a .live domain.
Power Lunch, yep.
Yeah. And so, Ben.
And one more thing I just want to say, I've enjoyed this show, being on the show a lot. And listen, if you want a free copy of this book today, you can go to benfanning.com, and maybe Rhett can put it in the notes, or benfanning.com/power, like Power Lunch, power.
Can you do that when you just comment on in the
Okay, I can do that. benfanning.com/power, and you can put your name and email on there, and I'll get your address and information when the book's live, and I'll send you a copy of it to enjoy.
Nice.
So yeah, just go there and sign up, and you'll be on the early notification list when the book's live.
See?
I'll send it to you.
See? Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey man, Ben, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for your time, Rhett.
And again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Tomorrow, I'm not going to be on the air, so I'm going to take tomorrow off. And enjoy the beautiful and enjoy the beautiful city of Charleston here in town while we're in town. But anyway, we'll have you back on in a couple weeks when the book's out.
Sounds great.
So we can talk about that. But all right, thank you.